Hi, I'm doing some marking of my students' writing today, and I thought I might take you through one of their pieces before I actually put pen to paper on it. So, in this task, which we did last week, we did a second person perspective writing task. So, second person is very rare in fiction. It's when you refer to everything as you entered the room. All right, so students are more used to writing in first person, I entered the room, or third person, she entered the room, or the character's name, John entered the room. So second person perspective, very rare. I think when I discussed this with students, I told them it wouldn't be a good idea to experiment with such a technique in selective unless they could use it for just a small piece of their narrative. But yeah, I did like to expose them to it. It's even quite hard to find stories that use second person. So what we did was we read a Ray Bradbury short story called The Night, which is told from the rare second person perspective. Now, the strategy I use in teaching writing to children is we read a lot of a story, so the vast bulk of it, and then I'll cut the ending off, and then they have to try and figure out what the ending is and resolve the story. So that's what they were doing here. Add your own resolution to the story, maintaining the second person perspective and trying to adhere to the author's original tone. Yeah, the tone of this story was very somber, and that's what I was looking for students to do. We see in this student's planning, so she's continuing on from the story. Doug is the protagonist of the story. He's an 8-year-old boy, realizes the ogre of death. All right, so I'm not sure this student, it's a year 5 student, she's a pretty good student. I'm not sure she completely understands that the ogre of death is a figurative device. It's not a real ogre, right? This was the trick to understanding this story. It's essentially a horror story, but not in a physical sense, and children really have trouble understanding that. All right, so Doug realizes the ogre of death has taken him, and now Doug is dead. Well, that would have been interesting. That would have been an interesting twist. And themes, yeah, fear is definitely one of the themes. So she did pick that up, but I'm not sure, and worry, but I'm not sure she's managed to encapsulate it correctly in her story. All right, so I'm going to go through this and sort of show you what I think of what she's done and how I would talk to her about it when I see her next. Okay, The Night, the world around you. See, it's very engaging writing in second person like this. Really sucks the reader in straight away. The world around you darkens. A feeling of fear kindles. Yeah, good word to use there. Interesting vocabulary choice. In your head. Now, I'm not sure head is the best thing to link fear to. It might be, your stomach or your gut would be a more visceral feeling. See, and I'd explain to her, yeah, why don't you try and even use that word, visceral, which means a feeling deep within you. Mother vanishes and a baleful silhouette. Oh, some really good vocabulary there. So there's the evidence of someone learning good vocabulary. Baleful means menacing. Very difficult word. I don't think many people would know that word. Appears in front of you. The figure is svelte. Yeah, I would have to talk to her about using this svelte. Svelte's a good example of connotation. It's a positive word for being slim or slender. Right, so I'd probably, the figure is cadaverous would really add to the feeling of fear that she's trying to create. Is svelte and tall and slowly drifts towards you. Oh, that's quite a nice tone. You realize that you can't move and your body is numb. All right, nice word there, numb. I think she's really continued the tone very well. All right, apart from the svelte, it's got quite a, fear-fraught feeling. You sweat your worries out. Yeah, this could be rephrased a little bit better, I think. You sweat your worries out. All right. Yeah. Just doesn't maintain the formal tone of what's gone before it. As a chill crawls up your spine, well, that's not bad imagery. It still sounds a little bit juvenile. It's like a child has written it, which you don't want to appear in this sort of text. You run around the dark atmosphere. That doesn't make sense, right? So Because atmosphere is just a feeling, like a climate. You can't run around it. Even figuratively, it doesn't make sense. So yeah, I would have had to have a talk to her about that. I will talk to her about that when I see her. And you notice that you are actually not moving whatsoever. The dark, dark. Now this is good. She picked this up from the original text. Bradbury had personified the dark, so that's why it has a capital D there, and he had used that phrasing, the dark, dark. It's something he does in his stories. I remember in another story of his about a dinosaur that lives far under the water, he would talk about the deep deeps. Okay, so it's a technique that he uses. The dark, dark is looming. I love the use of looming there, great word. And you clutch, nice verb, which implies her feelings of worry. Your green jumper, yeah, I'm not sure why you need to say green at that point. It sort of undermines the tone, which still has ice cream splotches from earlier. Yeah, earlier in the story he went to the shop to buy ice cream. So that's a good link to the original part of the text. Mum, mummy, you cry. Mum, where are you? You hear no reply. You are now alone. All alone. Oh, I love that. That's very good writing. Okay, that she's accentuated, emphasized the alone. That's a good technique to use. You are now alone, all alone. So you repeated it, but strengthened it as well. Just you again. That's a very good sentence. Right, because it links to what's gone in the story before. It's about how you as an 8-year-old boy feel all alone because you can tell even your mum is scared at the moment. Or are you? The death ogre appears and you are flabbergasted. Alright, yeah, this is where the story seems to go off the rails a little bit because you had this great, tone of fear and being alone, which is really what the story is about. It's a horror story where essentially in the actual ending, nothing happens. Right? Your brother's gone missing. You go out searching for him with your mother. You go into this deep ravine that is very frightening at night. You think of all the horrible possibilities, and then your brother appears, and there's no problem. And mum is relieved, but the thing about you is you're not relieved, right? You had all those horrible thoughts, and it's affected you. Okay, so no, but her literally bringing the death ogre into this, yeah, it's a little bit confused. All right, so I would tell her to, from here, yeah, cut that out. She'll probably need to change this whole ending part. Skip, skipper, skip, skipper. You hear a voice call. You are confused. You thought you were dead, but you are alive. Mum, you say to confirm your prediction. Some nice vocabulary there. Skip, skipper is all you hear. Alright, so this ending part's very ambiguous. I'm not sure what's even going on here. Alright, and that's all she managed to write in the 20 minutes that we did. So she hasn't even really seemed to resolve the narrative, right? And when we finished writing, we read the actual ending, which is a very clever story. It's essentially a story where nothing happens, as I said, but you come to understand now this 8-year-old boy has changed. He's gone through a horrible ordeal, and he no longer sort of trusts his parents or believes his parents can protect him, and that's the frightening part of the story. Not that there's a monster in it or so on. So yeah, this student did a good job, and there's some nice vocabulary. I would say up to here, you are all alone, just you. Apart from the bit about the green jumper, which I'll and a couple of words that are incongruous with the tone. Pretty good job, maintained the tone. Story's going an interesting way, being alone. See, I think now that she knows the actual ending, she could change from here, change the story from where the death ogre appears, and just have Skipper appear. All right, you then have the juxtaposition, the irony, the ironic ending of no, there's nothing wrong, and Skipper's there, and everyone's happy except you. Right? You faced your fears. You've had to think about all these negative things while confronting this situation. So yeah, overall, I thought pretty good. The student would have come to understand the second person perspective, how it can help you create atmosphere, create tone, and by reading the actual ending, you also come to understand techniques that good writers use. That you can have a horror story that doesn't have monsters, that it's the fear is all in your head. Like I would talk to the students about how the famous idiom encapsulates that. The only thing to fear is fear itself. Right? So if Douglas had gone down into the ravine and he's not thinking about all these horrible things, there's no real problem. So the fear is all in his head. All right, well, I hope that provided you some insight on how you could use second person perspective in writing.